State of the Valley Address. My name is Terry Rywich. I am the co-chair of the Governmental Affairs. A little bit about our committee is that we monitor legislation at the local, state, and federal levels. We host this event as you're attending today. We host a pre-legislative event, which will happen generally in December timeframe. That usually includes your governor and state senator for District 48. We also host Lincoln Legislative Trip during session. We host Roles and Issues conference calls with the District 48 senator on a biweekly standpoint. And then we also host contested candidate forums, which occurred last week that we did that. So I would like to thank our sponsors. If you could just stand for a round of applause. Western States Bank, Allo Communications, Northfield Retirement Communities, CenturyLink, Hampton Inn and Suites, Mobius Communications, and a special thank you to KNEB for providing live coverage and recording this event. So please give them a round of applause. And at this time, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, who is Jenny Mattern with the City of Terrytown. Please welcome Jenny.
Good afternoon, everyone. Mayor Chris Perales would like to send his apologies for not being able to be here today. His full-time job tends to get in the way of some of these daytime activities. So I'm just going to go through, some of the things that Terrytown has done. We talked a lot about COVID this year, so wanted to bring to mind what we did as far as a COVID response. We were lucky enough to be able to continue business pretty much as usual. Right down to our utilities people still being able to go out and do their own jobs. Code enforcement took a different action. Rather than presenting letters and door knockers directly to the residents, she would tape them on the doors. As far as our office being open, the doors were locked, still able to take phone calls, and I was actually still able to do daily functions in the office without having to work remotely, as I was given a key and a code to the security system by the Carpenter Center. We only had one slight delay, that was with Henning Construction, who is doing our water meter installation. They had to do a quarantine for 2 weeks. Some of the things that we've done this year was a pretty large chip seals project within the city. As you can see, there was several roads that were taken care of this year. The other big thing, obviously, is our water meter project, and this just gives you an example of the equipment that was had to be used and was parked in residential areas. There's about, not 100% positive if they're completed with the installation, but at the time that the PowerPoint was put together, they had 20 meters left to go. Working really diligently on the community with cleanup. Now we have a full-time code enforcement officer who's able to go through the alleys, make sure those are cleaned up, make sure sidewalks are scooped, actually hold the residents accountable for their properties. Just another example. Been working together very closely with the Scottsbluff Police Department, hoping to keep the crime levels, at the very least steady, if not better. Only 482 reports between January and September of 2020. Largest calls was 78, and that was suspicious circumstances, and I don't believe there were arrests involved in those. For 2020 to 2021, we'd like to see a lot more community involvement, a lot more focus on the actual community in itself and what it has to offer. We'd like to start by having food trucks days, potentially down by Terry's Lake, just to get more people there, maybe interested in bringing some more business in. And then we'd like to start being part of the Scottsbluff Gering Farmers Market and taking our alternate day in there. That's what I have. I'd like to welcome the mayor of the city of Gering, Tony Kaufman.
Safety first. Well, I want to thank everybody for being here today. I was looking out at the crowd before we got started, and I see we had one sponsor here. Thank you for coming today. So I think this is, for a politician, this is as close to preaching to the choir as I think we can get, as most everybody here is agency related. So we appreciate everybody's attendance. I want to talk about Gering today. I think the first thing when I think of Gering, we talk about our team. We got a great team in Gering. This is our senior staff. It starts at the top, and leadership is really a product of your culture. We've worked hard the last couple of years on our culture and trying to really change that and attract good people to our organization. Currently, we're about 100 strong, 85 full-time employees, and then, in our seasonals, we can get up to about 150 in the peak summertime, but great team here in Gering. Council, now that's another discussion. We do have a great council. We don't always agree from time to time, but we do come together once we have a consensus on a decision, and can't say enough about these folks. We've been faced with lots of challenges this year, lots of tough decisions, and this is a great group to work with as we go forward into the community. Really wanted to kind of highlight some strategic initiatives. We've talked about these over the past several years. Really wanted to make sure we highlighted some of the key things that we work on as an organization in our community and really in our extended communities. Did forget one on that list, and that's education. Education's a huge component of what we do. Now, how we prioritize these initiatives really kind of depends on the funding mechanisms that we have as a community available to us. But we're going to start and talk about some of those successes that we've had over the last few years. Our first one is our regional partnerships. We've got great partners in Gering. Scottsbluff, Terrytown, and the county have always been great partners with us. As we travel around the state and look at other community structures across the state, we really have a unique opportunity out here, and that is we can leverage each other's resources to be better. We can do bigger and better projects that really have a great impact, a positive impact on our communities. So really can't say enough about our partners. The partnership that I'm going to talk about today, the first one is our landfill. And this might have been one of the first projects or presentations that we haven't talked about water project for Terrytown, but the landfill is the Terrytown project for Gering. We've talked about it for a decade. We're probably going to talk about it for another 6 or 8 years until that thing's complete. But it's a great project, a great regional project. We've identified about 8 partners. We're happy Scottsbluff recommitted to that project a couple weeks ago. As we go forward, we look to really have a great solution to long-term waste in our community and our region as we go forward. Another one is a regional land bank, an LB 424, and we're going to hear a lot more about this one in the coming months. Really, before we go much further, though, we really have to say some thank yous on this one. Senator Stinner was a huge champion to this legislative bill, and really couldn't have got it across the finish line without his dedication to that. Along those lines, Mayor Bailey from Loop City, Michelle Coolidge from Twin City Development. Michelle and I met with Governor Ricketts 2.5 years ago to really get that on the governor's radar on what this tool could potentially impact our communities and rural Nebraska in general. A lot of hard work's been spent the last 2.5 years in Lincoln trying to get this legislative tool hammered out. Senator Stinner took this on and championed this as one of his priority legislative bills. And really, when this thing is done and fully implemented regionally, this could be as impactful as LB 840 is in a lot of communities. And so we're going to take this out for a test drive and work with some other regional partners in the coming months to see what we can do to get this done. And what does this do? This helps address affordable workforce housing. That is really the essence of that land bank bill. we've got properties and we've got communities that have a lot of affordable housing that is just ready to be tapped into, but we need some reinvestment in some of those properties and some of those neighborhoods and some of those communities to make them more viable investment opportunities for the private sector. And so we're not looking to be developers in this, but we are looking to help troubled assets be more productive as we go forward. So look out for more of that with our partners as we go forward. The next one we want to talk about is the budget. And, you know, sometimes there's bad guys and sometimes there's good guys in the budget, but fiscal health is very important to any community. We've kind of contracted our budget going into the next year. We've got a lot of projects, you know, on the docket for 21. We need to finish some before we take on more irons in the fire, but, you know, we've got a good cash position, you know, at almost $20 million. We've got a lot of resources available, and our property tax asking is still one of the lowest in the state, and so we always want to make sure that we're highlighting that. But enough about money. We want to talk about COVID. You know, COVID's been a huge, huge impact to all of our lives this year. And, you know, looking at all the masked faces, we're going to still deal with this for a while to come. You know, how does this impact communities? You know, we talk and hear a lot about PPP and all these programs that are getting approved in the CARES Act, and how does that money trickle down to our communities? You know, from a conservative estimate, and that's our 390 number, I mean, that is our labor impact to the city of Gering as it stands today. And that's really scratching the surface. I mean, when you get into time value of money and loss of production and all the extras that you have to spend, the number can get a lot bigger, but it's really hard to put a quantitative number on that. The number 278 is another one that's important to make sure you're aware of. And that is the number that we think, if relief is approved in another version of the CARES Act, our personal or public safety people, we think we can recover up to $278,000 if that's approved. As of right now, the 390 is the impact number to our budget, which obviously was not planned for. So like many of our businesses and our local businesses that got PPPs, there was no PPP for any agency. So any state or county or municipal agency, we've had to just eat that, and so hopefully we can get some of those bills passed in D.C. in the coming months. The other one that we really want to make sure that we're aware of and the public is aware of, you know, we've passed $350,000 in economic LB 840 relief for retention of businesses in our communities that have been significantly impacted by COVID. You know, our hospitality industry and restaurants, you know, we know many of those people in the community, they're impacted, and they're going to continue to be impacted, and they needed some help. And so luckily we had some resources there to kind of help keep those businesses alive and keep those, hopefully get them down the road far enough to where we can start seeing more activities in our community. You know, the next one on the, sorry, I gotta get my, we want to talk about our accomplishments. You know, 2020, despite all the negativity we read in the press and we hear in the press every single day, we've done a lot in 2020. And, you know, I think that's a testament to our communities and the communities that we have and serve. We're roll up our sleeves and get it done. And 2020 was no different. You know, the first one that we tackled was our comp plan. You know, it was about a 1.5-year project in the making. You know, we needed a new rule book. Ours was over 30 years old and needed a refresh. We had great community participation. We had great leadership from within, and our council championed this initiative all the way around. This really helped feed a lot of economic development projects into our community. I'd have to say too, I mean, in this process, we helped deregulate. When you came to town, it was difficult before. There was a lot of hurdles and extra hoops to jump through to open a business. We really wanted to try to streamline that process and make it simpler, more clear for businesses to understand that, hey, we are here and want you here. How can we improve our environment? And we've done that. And so with that, we've had a lot of economic development in the community. This is just one project. It was a great partnership we'll hear more about later. Another project is our Crossroads project that's going on currently. Was really our first project in our new industrial park. a great leader in our community, and this will really help solidify both communities as being one of our primary grain facilities communities in the Panhandle. And so we look forward to added development in that. They were able to utilize TIF and LB 840 funding, but a great partner going forward. Another one is our Hotel 21 project, another great community-minded business leader in our community. They've made a definite impact in our community with the 21 Center and Steel Grill, and now with the addition of the Hotel 21, really helping to improve and transform our 10th Street corridor. But looking for great things out of that project as they near completion in the coming months. Next one we want to talk about is public safety. And, once again, our crew and Chief Olthus and his group, one of the safest, top 10 safest in the state. Great group, but really super hands-off in 2020. I mean, they're putting their health and the safety of their families on the line every single day. Every first responder in the room can attest. I mean, COVID's real. I mean, and those challenges are out there every single day, and we've had to manage through those situations as we've had officers and first responders, catch it and spread it within departments. But those are just challenges that we've got to work through. But hats off to that group. They've served our community well. Our next one is our fire department. We've had a lot of challenges. We had a recent challenge here this fall with that Banner County Wildcat Hill fire. They did a tremendous hats-off job, and we have a lot of leadership and a lot of training with our volunteer crew. They really helped provide and stabilize some leadership with all the other agencies that responded to that call. Definitely garnered the attention of the governor as he came out and addressed them. Can't say enough. I mean, they definitely, through that specific incident, stopped the spread of thousands of additional acres that could have been lost. And so we definitely want to hats off to them and what they do for our community. Next one is tourism and recreation. Gering has been long history of making a concerted investment in these two areas, and we've definitely, as a council, stayed that course. The addition of our Gering Civic Plaza this last year really is a testament to a great addition to our downtown area. We had a downtown revitalization committee that was second to none. Visionaries in the community and are able to add a lot of advice and really help steward this project through completion. We were also able to attract some additional grants and some other private money that'll help finish off the project. I know Wesco and Land O'Lakes matched, so they should be putting the final fire pits in hopefully yet this fall. We've had a few weather delays. I don't know if anybody noticed, but we hope to get that project complete and utilize that for generations to come. So that's just a few of the highlights. So now where are we going to go from here? Well, in the midst of all this, we also did a little succession planning in 2020, and our existing administrator, Lane Danielzik, gave us ample notice of his pending retirement, which we appreciate. We appreciate that. We had an administrator search in 2020, and COVID did impact that as well, as we had to delay the interview process in April and May when travel bans and a lot of restriction in traveling was going on. We had to delay that, and so we didn't get that accomplished until July, but we had a great process. We had some help from the University of Nebraska, helped establish that process for us, and as a council we were committed to make sure that came to be. And so with that, we saw through that transition and we named our successor. So we want to say thank you to Lane for 12 years of service, but we also want to welcome Pat Heath as we look to that change towards the end of the year. Our next one, we have to have an infrastructure conversation. We've got aging infrastructure. We all drive around town and see the potholes and the main breaks, and it's a challenge. A lot of funding has dried up over the last 15 to 20 years from federal sources that trickle down through the state and trickle down to rural communities, and as those sources have dried up, it's put a huge gap in some of our budgets and some of our projects, and you couldn't spend enough money on infrastructure. We could probably easily identify 25 million in projects for next year if we had the money, and that would really just catch us up to about a centuries old infrastructure. There is a tool out there and available. Nobody likes to talk about taxes and raising taxes, but LB 357 really is a great tool for communities to utilize. It is a potential extra half-cent sales tax, but I do think it's worthy to be noted, and it's something that we have to have conversations about as we go forward, because infrastructure is going to be a continued discussion as we go forward. And if we want to continue to be viable and have the assets to attract businesses and others to our community, we have to have a great infrastructure. Next one is future projects. Pathways. I think there's a continued dedication to making our communities walkable and having a healthier lifestyle. I think all the communities have made great strides in the last few years on added pathway projects and connectivity between the communities. Gering's no different. Federal projects like this, though, they take a lot of time. We had some that were in the pipeline even before I became mayor. We've been trying to stoke that fire and keep those projects moving along through the chains. We're hopeful that we can find some resolve on one that we've been working on for the last 4.5 years, and they just take a lot of time and they're expensive. But that's definitely something that's on our radar, and we know we need more of. We know the community wants it, and so we're working on that as we go forward. The other one is, if anybody's driven by or went to a Pioneer game this summer, our quad field project will be our second phase on our baseball and softball complex overhaul. Great project for the community. It goes back to our sports study that we did about a decade ago, and just reinvest in some assets that are heavily utilized in our community. I mean, we use those heavy throughout the summer. This will be really open up the doors for opportunities for sports, recreation, tourism, hosting of a lot of tournaments, maybe even state tournaments as we go forward, and so that's going to be an asset that we'll utilize for a long time into the future. The next one is a right-of-way cleanup project.
Grateful for the dedication, the service, the commitment you provide to the city. You guys are the ones making the difference. It's because of you that Scottsbluff is where it is today. So we're very, don't ever think that your hard work goes unnoticed. So now I'm going to turn this over, because we're going to tag team this. We did this last year. I'm going to turn this over to City Manager Rick Kukan. He's going to take you through some of the things that we've been up to this year. It's all exciting, it's progressive, and then after all, it's the city of Scottsbluff. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Raymond. It's good to be back. I recognize a lot of faces out there, and coming back for the second round has been a real privilege and a pleasure. I felt honored to be asked to come back, and I think you'll see by the presentation here that we are getting things done. We're moving forward. The city is advancing, and I think we've done a really nice job of doing that. This year with, let me get the sanitized clicker here. This year with COVID uncertainties, our city departments understood the need to submit budgets and projects that lived within our means, and there were a lot of uncertainties. We weren't sure. Our projections for revenues were up and down, and working with the state, we came to I think some pretty good conclusions with respect to revenues. And I just got to echo what the mayor said. We do have a great group of department heads. I'm always impressed, constantly impressed by their innovation and willingness to get the job done. Our staff, likewise, just a bunch of really great people, hardworking people with a great work ethic. And we got some department heads and staff over here. Raise your hands so we can see who you are. Come on, hi, nice. They promised to applaud loudly when I was done here, so I'm going to watch them very carefully and make sure that happens. Go through some numbers here. Citywide all funds budget was $48 million this year. That's a lot of money. Many of you have heard that we needed to bring our budget into better balance with cash reserves. That's a kind of a state guidance, guide point, if you will. And to do this, we allocated cash reserves to Avenue B, which the mayor mentioned earlier. It's an overlay project from 27th to the Beltline. About $500,000 to water tower renovation and maintenance. We're funding our CRA, Community Redevelopment Authority, to the tune of about $500,000, and then there's a $500,000 allocation for council preferred projects. They've allocated $200,000 to the baseball diamond, the 23 club baseball renovation, and I'll get to that in just a minute. So now we have roughly $48 million in our budget, in our all funds budget, and $48 million in our cash reserves. Overall, you see here our revenue sources are primarily sales tax, utility fees, and the NPPD lease payments. And specifically in our general fund, revenues depend on sales tax and the NPPD lease. So we monitor those taxes very carefully. To our surprise, well, maybe not to our surprise, but it was kind of a nice surprise. Hail damage repairs have contributed heavily to the sales tax revenues this year. And you're looking at a fairly significant increase in revenues. It's over 13%. We don't expect that to continue. In fact, it already has begun to taper off. So it'll reach normal levels probably over the next several months here and in the near future. I wanted to give you an idea of where our general funds are spent. You can see here there's a major influx of funds for public safety. Police and fire take up roughly 60% of the general fund allocation. And then we go to library administration, et cetera. So public safety remains a real strong commitment for this council and community. Councils over the years have been very conservative in their spending patterns, and I'm talking decades really. We have one of the second lowest levy among Nebraska first-class cities, and you can see Gering is pretty close there too. They're just a couple of notches above us in terms of that spending pattern. So I think Scottsbluff, as does Gering, remains in an enviable position with very little debt and sustainable revenues. Of course, COVID presented numerous challenges. One was, as I said earlier, to estimate impacts on our revenues. What's going to happen with the sales tax? How will COVID affect the egg industry, our gas tax, et cetera? And as events unfolded and through contacts at the state level, we were able to land on some fairly reliable estimates. A second COVID challenge was to ensure that we could continue delivering essential services. So we were early in the process of kind of closing things down, work from home, masking, et cetera. We did have a number of COVID illnesses back then and continue to have them now. But really adjusted well with backup plans and worked through problems, which continues today. And again, I turn to the department heads and their creativity. Kevin Spencer and the police department spread our police shifts out so that we weren't piling larger numbers of officers in one shift. We spread them out, and yeah, there were some impacts on service, but we did a tremendous job, I think, in maintaining a high level of service in police. And I'd echo that same compliment to Tom. Tom is our our fire chief, and he split his shifts entirely. He put them in two separate locations, one at WNCC and one at the fire station. So we had a fairly secure public safety presence in the community over the course of this COVID situation. Right now, everybody is working from city facilities, and we don't anticipate that changing in the near future. But it is constantly changing. It's a moving target. And you can see from this past month's increases in COVID cases that there's good evidence that we're heading toward some future changes in that regard. We've tried to run the city as a business, and any business needs to protect its employees to deliver the services that are so important to them. Projects. This maybe isn't a project per se, but I'm proud of the fact that we were able to provide a 2% increase in employee wages this year. Credit our police union, fire union, and the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers Union, that's a new union, for being able to understand and cooperate in terms of pay increases. That is commendable. They did understand the situation that we were in and were very accommodating. In addition, we completed a number of projects, important projects, maintained what we have, and innovated as well. One of those projects is the Pathway. This is an $8 million funded project, and it's nearly completed. We are looking at a completion date for the bridge, the overpass on Highway 26 in November this year, and then next summer that project will be totally completed. Here we have our LB 840. LB 840 projects were very active this year. We had one of the largest awards in the history of LB 840, Prime Metals products, $1.5 million. That's located in Gering, and Tony alluded to that earlier, and I think it illustrates the cooperative nature that we have with the city of Gering and the surrounding communities. Economic development is important to us all. The growth that it represents, the growth in jobs that it represents is critically important to us all, and I think we're all working together and moving in that direction cohesively. So those are some of the LB 840 projects. Hats off to Star. She's done a wonderful job, and as was alluded to earlier, working with TCD now once again, I think is really going to bode well for the future of our economic development. These are some additional projects. And you know, you look at these buildings, they're all good quality buildings. They do represent substantial employment opportunities and really bodes well for our future. The East Overland Facade project was very successful this past year, and actually we've expanded that in this current budget year, adding another $250,000 in funding, and that goes to our Community Redevelopment Authority. We've expanded it beyond just East Overland to the entire community. I should say those areas that are blighted and substandard, designated as blighted and substandard. But you can see from the before pictures on the upper tier with the after pictures, it really does make a significant difference in the streetscape. There's a great deal of pride that's generated in that, community pride, pride in the business, and it does make a big difference. That was recognized by our mayor and council, and that's why they said we needed to fund more of it. We need more, not less. Technology has been emphasized, adding new layers of information to our GIS system and expanding that service. We now have a phone app that lists refuse schedules among other pieces of information that are tied to your specific address. So if you download this app, sign in, you can find out what your refuse schedule is without having to call in all the time. And there's a whole gamut of other information that's available through that phone app. So we're really working ahead. Working ahead and trying to modernize some of those things. You'll see ads promoting that downloaded app on our refuse trucks and on our website. Speaking of the website, we're updating that. And we're also implementing tablets in our service vehicles to electronically dispatch and track service calls. And we have a new employee. Zach, raise your hand. Zach put this presentation together. He's a whiz, and is also working on some of these technology innovations. We've got some young folks that are coming on board talking about transition. They're really, really smart people. They don't necessarily like to get in a pigeonhole. They like to diversify and do a lot of different tasks, so we're taking advantage. There's several of them in City Hall now that I'm just super impressed with. And again, that bodes well for our future. Upcoming projects, we talked a little bit about most of these. I would add the typical vehicle replacement. That gets kind of expensive when you're talking about a $250,000 refuse truck or $1 million sewer jet. So those numbers add up pretty quick. We do a really nice job of replacing playground equipment, modernizing it. And again, the workforce training is another area that we'll be getting into here in this next year. If you look at that lower photo, let's see, right there, that's the bridge that'll go over Highway 26 and connect the pathway north and south of Highway 26. So there they are. That's the group I work with. They're all good people. And I think that the most important thing to recognize is that this mayor and council has been very supportive. I've been impressed with their willingness to go along with some ideas that maybe didn't seem that great at the time, but eventually or ultimately worked out. So my hat's off to this group. They're looking to the future. They've put the city in a really fine financial condition, and I think it's going to end up making this community a great place to live and work. And with that, I'll turn it over to Ken Meyer.
Well, after Mayor Kaufman's presentation, all I can say is thank you, everybody. We'll see you next year. Okay, again, we want to thank everybody for having us here again this year. And start out with, you guys are so serious. Loosen up just a little bit. A couple good things with the masks. I see everybody in masks. Save on breath mints. I didn't make it up. I read it somewhere. These aren't my jokes. You can stick your tongue out at people and they don't know it. I've been doing that a lot lately. Yeah. I was at a meeting a while back. This isn't my story. I wish it was. But one of the commissioners told his wife, he said, I know you're down about not being able to go places. He said, when this is over and things settle down, I think, who was here? I saw a couple folks that were at that same meeting. He said, we're going to put a map up on the wall, and we're going to throw a dart. And wherever the dart lands, that's where we're going to go. They've been spending quite a bit of time behind the refrigerator. Well, I got to get that picture off.
No, you're fine. Just now leave it back there. That's good.
Really?
You could make jokes about them if you want. Yeah, yeah,
I just want to know what scared you, Gonzales.
yeah. It was the camera. The camera scared me.
Nice picture.
There's more hope.
Really? Do you want to come back? You want to handle this? You know, I asked a couple of people at the county whether they would like to do my presentation, and they said no. Big fat no. So I don't know how you get this done, Gonzales. I don't know how you get Rick to come up and do it for you. But anyway, here we are. Some of the county-sponsored events, and these aren't all county-sponsored events. This is put together by a whole bunch of people. The Old West Balloon Fest, the Street Outlaws filming in our area for a while. If you lived anywhere close to them, you knew that they were here. We did really well till we moved out to the North Highway 26 area, and we're star. They told us where they were going to be, but they moved a little bit closer to the housing area. So we had several phone calls from the folks that were awakened at 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. That's why they call them outlaws, I think, because these cars are loud. But I think economically it helped us out a lot. We'll never really know, I don't think, how much money they brought in, but I'm hearing in the millions. All really good people, and I think Charlie was telling me it's going to be coming up actually pretty quick on their program. We'll be able to watch when they were here. Discovery Channel really liked the area and they want to do more things out here. So I think that's a good thing for the area. The girls Class B state golf tournament was out here, and I know everybody that worked on that worked very, very hard to get it here. And I'm hearing rumors that the boys may come out here also. We don't know that for sure, but we're keeping our fingers crossed that happens. This is called the State of the Valley, and I can tell you that as far as the county is concerned, things are looking good. As far as the county is concerned, we're doing okay. We have a total budget, $46,247,000 and some change compared to $46,148,000. Not a big difference. Unlike the city of Scottsbluff that goes into their budget year with money to spend, we start out with a deficit on a yearly basis. But thanks to our budget manager who helped us out tremendously, and I want to thank Lisa for all the hard work that she does, all the department heads, all the elected officials. We got a balanced budget. Everybody worked very, very hard, and I want to thank everybody for that. The law enforcement, which takes in the detention center, the sheriff's office, those kinds of things, is about $14 million. There's a little bit of breakdown. The sheriff's office is about $2.3 million. The detention center is about $6.6 million. The comm center is about $1.3 million out of that, and the rest of it is spread to the courthouse, probation services, those kind of places. The highway and roads is right at $7 million, $7.5 million. They actually need about twice that much to do everything that needs to be done. This is one department, and those of you that put budgets together know that when you have a large budget, that's the one that you go to get your money. And that poor department gets cut on a yearly basis. And we've done everything that we possibly can do to keep that up and running and do it the way it needs to be done. They've got about 900 miles of roads to maintain. They get deeper cuts every year, but they still manage to do a pretty decent job. They handle a ton of complaints on a daily basis. One good thing is that we're going to try to get some Stiegel Road done this year. We tried to do 5 miles, but we're only going to get 3 miles done. But at $1.3 million a mile, we just don't have all the money to get it done. We may get more done, but we're working on it. Plus all the bridges and all the other roads that need repairs also. Communications. The communications department, as I said, communication gets about $1.3 million. And I don't see Ray. Ray's going to be leaving us, I think, in December or January. We're not sure when he's made the decision, but he is going to retire. I think he's been with us 12 or 13 years. Ray came to us and took a department that was almost dial phone kind of a situation, and basically turned that into a state-of-the-art communication center, and continues to do that. He hasn't stopped. Ray has run into a few health issues. He just had a heart attack about a month and a half ago. Flew him over to Denver, and he's back on the job again. But he's decided to retire and enjoy life. So we'll be looking for another director there in the communications center. Emergency management is $2,764,000. A lot of that is state money. Most of it's state money. Under old projects, new projects. Where are we at here? Yeah, I'm messed up, but that's all right. Under new projects, we are going to install a WebEx camera system in the court to allow visual access for court proceedings. We talked about the Stiegel Road. Back to the road department, and there's some new projects. The chipper, like the city has done throughout town, we bought our own. So there. We don't have all the fancy pictures that you guys, but we got a chipper. Found one down in Florida. Linda found one, went down and had it hauled up here, so we'll be doing, hopefully, some repair work with our own stuff. But that's going to save some money and hopefully get some more roads repaired.
Are you going to operate that?
Excuse me?
Are you going to operate that?
If I have to, I will. Whatever has to happen. Under the detention center, we've got a little under 300 guests over there right now, and we've got a little issue going on there right now. 33 of them have tested positive for the COVID. And that's a problem because we can't send them home. They have to be isolated in different areas. 12 of our staff have tested positive, and that number just keeps going up. But they're under the watchful eye of Sheriff Overman. Several of those guests that we have are paid for by the federal government. We started that out 10 years ago. We get we have a government contract for federal prisoners, which helps pay the bill. The sheriff took over the jail a year and a half ago, I believe, a little over a year ago anyway, and has done a marvelous job for us. I'll tell you what, folks, we have a sheriff that is, not only a good law enforcement, but a good administrator. He stepped in. Things are looking so much better over there. We renegotiated an old contract that has been in effect from the time the jail was open. We're getting a ton more money from the federal government and also from other states that are bringing prisoners to us. So things are looking much better. So under the guidance of he and Vonnie Cotent, who also just tested positive, so she's home. Her husband actually came down with us, so she's under quarantine right now. The morale has improved, not so much with the inmates, but the rest of them are doing well. Well, what do you want me to say? Wasn't my fault they're there, but with the staff, the turnover is down and things are really starting to improve at the detention center, which is great. FEMA, we're still working on some blizzard assistance things, from last year. Takes time. You're working with the federal government, trying to recover some of the costs that we had, and we had a lot of costs out on the county roads, removing the snow, equipment repair, those kind of things, up into the thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars. Linda's doing a great job of getting that money returned, so hopefully we'll get that back. And the last one that we'll talk about is aloe. I see some people with aloe on their shirts. How many? Just one. This is no reflection on you, because I know you had nothing to do with this, all right? But I'm gonna put it out there, and we're gonna get it straightened out. This is the real story. Go ahead, laugh, Kukon, because this was on your watch. All right, here it is. I want everybody to listen close, because I want no questions afterwards. 10 years, hey, I'm talking now. I didn't talk during yours. I slept a little, but I didn't talk during yours. All right, I do, all right. We entered into a contract about 10 years ago with Elo. Great company. Thank you for all the things that you do. I have Elo. It's good, good thing. They said they were going to pay us a percentage of what they make. We don't know how much that was, whether it was $100 a month or $1 million a month. We didn't know that, didn't have a clue. We received a check every quarter for that amount. It went to our clerk and it was deposited. It was based on something. We didn't know what it was. And this is the truth. I'm not pulling any punches here, guys. This for about 10 years. All of a sudden, and I don't know whether it was Scottsbluff, Gering, or Terrytown, but I'm guessing it was Scottsbluff, but I don't know. They're the troublemaker. One of their fine financial people went to Kukon and said, "Anybody seen any checks from Elo?" They said, "Nope." Well, no. Well, aren't we supposed to get a check from Elo? They said, "No." They called Gering. "You guys getting any money from Elo?" "No, we haven't gotten any." Of course, then they called Terrytown. Terrytown said, "No, we haven't got any." So they called Elo. Elo said, "Well, of course we've been sending checks out for the last 10 years. We've been sending them to the county. They were supposed to give them to you guys." So then they called us. "Haven't you been giving that money to Scottsbluff, Gering, and Terrytown?" That'd be a big fat no. No. We looked at the contract. Nowhere in the contract did it say we were supposed to divvy it up, because we didn't know how much we were supposed to get or we were supposed to give it to anybody. It didn't say any of that in the contract. Again, no reflection on you because you didn't write the contract. We're okay. That's when the fight began. Because we didn't know we were supposed to do it. We didn't know how much money we were supposed to get. But of course, the city knew how much they were supposed to get, because all of a sudden they became accountants. So they knew how much they were supposed to get. And they told us how much they were supposed to get. Now, in the meantime, the social media went crazy. And I want to put something to bed. I didn't get any of that money. We didn't take any vacations, as was told us. We didn't go anywhere. It was spent on motor graders or gravel or wages or whatever it was spent for. I don't have any idea what it was spent for, but it went into the city or into the county checking account, and it was spent for the 36,000 people that live in the county. It was gone. But they all got together and said, "We'd sure like to have our money back." And we said, "Well, boy, I wish we could write you a check, but we just don't have it right now." Then things got ugly. Elo shut me down to 3 black and white channels. Lost my internet, lost my phone service, And it got even worse. These two guys over here wouldn't leave me alone. One day I'm standing in the checkout line at Dollar General buying a couple of cards, which, by the way, you can buy cards for $1 at Dollar General. Great cards. And I hear this voice coming from the back. It's Gonzales buying his lunch. Ken, do you have my check? Do you have my check? No, I don't have your check. No, you're not going to get it. Every place I go, he's following me around, wants his money. Middle of the night, I hear this noise outside my house. It's Kukan with an old Army surplus bullhorn. Ken, you got to help me. This is on my watch. You got to help me. You got to give us a check. Quick. Fine. Kent Greenwald, bless his heart, even tried to write me a check. Said, no, Kent, you don't have to do that. We're going to get it straightened out. And it got ugly. They sent letters. They threatened. So we finally sent our top negotiator, Charlie Knapper. And Brad Moline stepped up to the plate. And here's was his words. We may have...
Hey, I've been hanging out here a long time outside of Panhandle Auto Group, and boy, do they have a great selection of vehicles.
And their sales team is great to work with, and you can also get your vehicle serviced and detailed too.
Welcome to Panhandle Auto. This is Sam Serta, General Sales Manager. It's been our pleasure to serve you for the past 2 years.
But it didn't come as a small price. It didn't come by a small price. Ray Richards now has to run Gering street sweeper every other month for the next 2 years. Jay Steinley from our maintenance department has to work at the zoo. I believe it's 1 weekend a month for the next year, somewhere around the monkey house. Somebody mentioned that something about me and goose droppings around Terry's Lake, but I'm not going to do that. That's off the table. We ain't doing that. But the deal is done, and I've got, in all seriousness, I've got to throw a big thank you out to Rick Kukan, who pulled it all together, made the phone calls, got the groups together, and we did come up with a good settlement. And we put it to bed. It's over and it's done. And Scottsbluff, Gering, Terrytown are now watching the mailbox just a little bit closer for that check from Ello. So this doesn't happen again. So we're not going to have to go through that anymore. And I think the other guys mentioned about employees. I want to put a shout out to ours. We have, and I don't have any picture of our bunch. You don't want to see them anyway. It doesn't matter. But I think in the 16 years that I've been on the board, this is probably one of the best boards that I've ever worked with. We have, and I've mentioned it to several people in our group, in the last couple of years, we've put a team together that I think is probably one of the best group that I've worked with. And I don't care whether it's a COVID or the blizzard or whatever the case might be, we can call that team together and we get things done. Things happen. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate the group at our county. And that's everybody. That's everybody. We have what I think are some of the finest employees around. They're hard workers, and you know, I don't hesitate. I'm not a micromanager. I can't tell you how to run a motor grader, but I tell you what, we've got some of the best motor grader operators around, and I tell them that. You know, I try to tell them as much as I can. We've got a guy that works in our maintenance department that keeps the floor in that administration building. You could put makeup on, it shines so much. They do just an excellent, absolutely excellent job. It's not the 5 of us that runs that county. Oh, we make some policies, we hold meetings, but it's all those other close to 300 people that work for the county. They're the ones that do the job. And I'll tell you what, folks, if you have the opportunity to tell them thank you, do it, because they deserve it and they appreciate it and they look forward to it. If you walk by them and you don't even talk to them, it hurts them. If you can just stop and say nice job or thank you for this or thank you for that, it makes a big difference. But I want to thank everybody again for allowing us to be here today to tell you a little bit about what's going on in our particular areas. And holy smokes, we're going to run out of time. Thank you very much, Mayor Kaufman, for your presentation. And hopefully next year we'll be back. We'll do some things. And thanks again. I don't know who to give this to, but we're done. Thank you.
Okay, well, thanks to our presenters. Now I'd like to open it up for any questions. If you have questions, I'd like to ask that you come over this direction so we can maintain social distancing, so you can speak into the mic. So with that, I'll open it up to questions. You answered them all. Okay. Hearing none, I'd like to close with, first of all, a round of applause to our speakers. Like to again thank our sponsors for this event. Without them, these events do not happen, so thank them. And then invite you to the upcoming December 1st pre-legislative breakfast, which will occur at the Scottsbluff Country Club. So keep your emails opened up and check those invites for that. So with all of that, I appreciate you all showing up today. Have a great day and a safe Halloween. Thank you.